private listing network. Super controversial topic these days. Should you use it? If so, when? And if not, why? Stay tuned. This episode of Keeping It Real is brought to you by Real Geeks. How many homes are you going to sell this year? Do you have the right tools? Is your website turning soft leads into interested buyers? Are you spending money on leads that aren't converting? Well, Real Geeks is your solution. Find out why agents across the country choose Real Geeks as their technology partner. Real Geeks was created by an agent for agents. They pride themselves on delivering a sales and marketing solution so that you can easily generate more business. Their agent websites are fast and built for lead conversion with a smooth search experience for your visitors. Real Geeks also includes an easy-to-use agent CRM. So once a lead signs up on your website, you can track their interest and have great follow-up conversations. Real Geeks is loaded with a ton of marketing tools to nurture your leads and increase brand awareness. Visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod and find out why realtors come to Real Geeks to generate more business. Again, visit realgeeks.com/keepingitrealpod. And now, onto our show. Today's episode is brought to you by Corded.io. Are you looking for agents to join your brokerage or team? Now, as a real estate recruiter, I can tell you the answer is always yes. But most agents aren't looking to move right now. So how do you know who to contact? Well, what if I were to tell you there's a recruiting and retention tool powered by artificial intelligence that shows you exactly which agents in your local market are looking to leave their brokerage right now and which agents at your own firm are also looking to leave you? Now, I've been recruiting realtors for 15 years and I've hired over 2,000 agents. I can tell you with no exaggeration, this is the tool I've been waiting for. Corded's AI looks for trends across dozens of variables for each agent in your market and shows you which agents they believe are likely to move. Not only does it do that, but Corded's AI went and visited my recruiting website and read everything I offer. So now when I'm recruiting, Corded's AI tells me exactly what to say based on that agent's needs and what my brokerage can offer. It even writes emails for me. I've never seen anything like it, and I use it every single day. Now, if you are looking to grow your brokerage, Corded.io is the best tool out there. Visit Corded.io to schedule a demo. Again, that's Corded.io. And now, onto the show. Welcome to Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I'm your guide and host through the show. And today is our monthly series called Unpopular Real Estate Opinions with Chris Linsell. Now, Chris Linsell is a real estate technology analyst and director of content at large for Luxury Presence. He specializes in new solutions to old questions, constantly exploring the cutting edge of technology in the real estate space. Chris has many years of experience as a licensed realtor in the state of Michigan and has worked as a marketer, a digital strategist, and a trainer for major national brands like Berkshire Hathaway Home Services of Michigan, Coldwell Banker Schmidt Realtors, and many others. Throughout his real estate career, Chris has been part of hundreds of transactions, ranging from modest rural starter homes to multi-million-dollar waterside compounds. He's also an accomplished musician, actor, and speaker, and Chris has engaged with audiences in sizes ranging from 30 to 3,000. He is often sought after for various industry events. You will see him at events like the National Association of Realtors annual meeting. You will see him at Inman. You will see him all over the place speaking all throughout the country. In fact, he was just on a webinar just now with almost 2,000 agents. So we are thrilled to have him. His voice is probably a little tired, but we'll get a few more minutes out of him before he collapses. But I want everybody to follow him on LinkedIn. And by the way, you can see his speaking schedule and connect with all of his social on his website, chrislinsell.com. But we're going to have a link to his LinkedIn as well. Just search Chris Linsell, Linsell. You'll find him, and you can see some of his unpopular real estate opinions there as well. Chris, welcome back.
DJ, great to be here. Yeah, as always, going to be a fun conversation. Looking forward to chopping it up with you.
So I've noticed a lot of talk in the industry locally here in Chicago, but in just in the industry in general outside of our market about the PLN, the private listing network. I don't know if every market has one specifically with their MLS, but certainly there are other private listing networks popping up. And they, right now, with all the changes and the challenges that have been happening with National Association of Realtors, the MLSs, and sort of trying to figure out where listings are going to live into the future, we are seeing a lot more activity on the PLN, at least here locally. And I just want to get your thoughts on, because I know there's a lot of our listeners who are constantly thinking, should I use it? When should I use it? Why should I use it? Or should I not use it? And how does it fit into this whole idea that I'm also a fiduciary? If I'm restricting the sight of a property or the visibility of a property to agents in the public, is that in conflict with my duties as a fiduciary? So let's dive into it. Let's get some ideas and thoughts from you about what your perspective is on private
Yeah.
listing network.
I think maybe the best place to start here is to actually define private listings and to remember that this is not a new concept. Like we have not private listings were not invented in the last 16 months or anything. We've had pocket listings for as long as real estate has existed. Additionally, we've had things in the gray area between a full-on pocket listing and a full-on listed property on the MLS for a long time too. Different markets have different requirements. Um, different different MLSs have different timelines in terms of when a property gets listed and based on what happens. So this is not a new conversation. Let's just first call out, like, private listings have been in one way, shape, or form a part of everybody's real estate understanding for a long time. I mean, many, many years at this point. And what is really, I think, a valuable kind of place to kind of partner with that starting point is to understand, as you correctly called out, real estate professionals have a fiduciary responsibility to their clients, um, to serve their interests and to get them, position them to be successful based on how success is defined for them, and their real estate goals. It is also important to recognize that while real estate professionals have an ethical and moral responsibility to the success and the health of the markets that they serve, they don't have a fiduciary responsibility to the markets that they serve. So I don't have a fiduciary responsibility for, if I'm a listing agent, it is not my fiduciary responsibility to position your clients who are buyers and their best interests. My responsibility is to my clients and their best interests. Your responsibility is to your clients. So one thing that we often, is kind of a confusion in terms around this conversation is that we confuse real estate professionals and their responsibilities to their market and community and the fiduciary responsibilities they have to their clients. Both of these responsibilities are important, but they are separate and they are to different people. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about private listings a little bit. DJ, when you think of private listings, like what is the scenario that you think of when you think of private listings?
So this actually happened to my sister, who happened to live next to a retired NFL player.
Hmm.
And because he was obviously a public figure, he was fairly prominent in the NFL, and had this big beautiful home sitting next to where my sister's property is. When they went put the property on the market, and it's a particularly unusual property. I think it has something like 10 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms. It's one of these kind of, luxury property listings that's funky and kind of weird. And so they didn't want people coming by just to come by to maybe get a glimpse of this celebrity, this athlete, and they also wanted some privacy around the
Hmm.
listing. So they did not post it on the MLS in the public, the public version of the MLS.
Hmm.
So it was sitting on the private listing network,
Yeah.
or the pocket listing
Yeah.
down there.
Yeah.
So I see that, and I think the use case for that makes a lot of sense. Uh,
Mhm.
Obviously, my sister was thrilled because she lives right next door and certainly didn't want people, and people filming with their phones and just coming over and saying, "Oh, this is where so and so lives. Let's see if we can get a glimpse of this
Mhm.
person." So, privacy is obviously important. They live on a public street, so
Yeah.
so it made sense in that capacity,
Yeah.
and but it still raises the question: is that in certainly from a privacy perspective, I could argue that's in the owner's best interest. Is it in financially? Is it in their best interest? I don't
Mm.
know. I guess there's an argument that could be made that maybe it isn't.
Well, so that I think is the conventional wisdom here, and in most cases, I would agree with you. In most cases, the open market is the obvious choice for sellers who are looking to maximize their exposure, and get top dollar. And it's really, I mean, this isn't like a philosophy. This is just market dynamics. If you want the highest and best price for a typical property, you want to expose it to the most number of people who are potential buyers, such that you get as much interest as possible for that property. But in the instance that you're describing here, yes, there is a privacy element to it, but I would argue, and I recognize this isn't the most popular opinion here, but that's the segment that we're dealing with here. Um, I would argue that it's not just privacy that is being served by the a private listing here. If you have a home that is substantially out of character for a typical listing. Like, let's say the typical listing in your market is, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, $450,000. But then you have that one house down the street that is 10 bedrooms, 10 baths, $6 million.
Hmm.
Um, Putting that property on the MLS is it is unlikely that doing so is going to expose it to a broader network of potential buyers
Right.
than a private listing strategy that utilizes marketing that more natively connects with people who are in that price point.
I think a lot of agents who want to do luxury and want to have these high price point listings, what they haven't yet realized, if they haven't yet had those listings, is it's not as simple as winning the listing. That's just kind of maybe even uh, before step one of working with that. That's just getting the owner to say, okay, well, I'll give you a shot. Because if it's a $10 million plus listing, as to your point, 99.99% of Americans aren't going to be able to
Mhm.
become a viable option for a buyer. So putting it on the MLS, yes, it gets more visibility, but it does it actually hit the market of those potential buyers? And the answer is probably not. And unless they're just waiting for $10 million properties to hit the
Mhm.
MLS. And what I've learned from talking to top luxury agents, you work at a company that works with lots of luxury agents, that these luxury listings, it's as much the listing agent's responsibility, or it's
Mhm.
it's as much work as they do to list the property is to
Yeah.
secure a buyer. Even though they're not on both sides necessarily, they
Mhm.
are doing the work of trying to find these high net worth individuals that are
Right.
able to afford these properties. So they're doing outbound marketing well beyond the MLS. They're calling agents who play in
Mhm.
that space. They're calling people who play in those sandboxes.
Right. So
It's a
there's an
tremendous amount. Yeah.
argument to be made then that the upside of the open market, which is the broad market exposure, which has a limited benefit the higher you go in price
Sure.
point, there's an argument to be made that the upside of that broader market exposure is does not surpass the downside of the attention that that listing might get, that would be detrimental to either the seller. Maybe the seller doesn't want people driving by their house
Yep.
and trying to get a peek in the windows. Um, Additionally, there are market indicators that are not as indicative of the health of a property that wind up being a detriment on super high luxury listings. And let me give you an example. So let's go back to this scenario that we described. Let's say the typical sale price in your market is $450,000, and let's say the typical days on market for a property in your market is 90 days.
Mhm.
That 90-day number makes sense in the context of a typical priced listing. A $450,000 market or price point, 90 days on market. If you are somebody who looks at days on market and you're looking at a property that is $450,000, but the days on market says 270 days on
Mhm.
market, as both a consumer and a professional, what's the first thing that jumps to your mind when you see something that's been on the market 3 times as long as the average listing?
Yeah, there's something amiss with that property. It's
Something's wrong with it,
priced
right?
incorrectly. There's some sort of problem that I need to now identify before presenting it.
Exactly. That's exactly what you should be thinking. And that, because that is almost always what's right or what's correct, is one or a combination of what you just listed. Now I want you to or shift your focus to that $10 million property that is also for sale in that $450,000 market, and keep in mind that the pool of available buyers for this property is shrunk by a factor of 100.
Sure.
So what we should be doing is multiplying that days on market by a factor of 100 to account for that, but we don't do that. We
Right.
see, oh shoot, this house has been on the market for a year and a half now. There must be something wrong with it. Even though there
That's
isn't
a really
something
great point.
there isn't something wrong with it. We just don't have the available buyer pool to support a healthy days on market measure per market. And so but here's the problem. Agents can explain this to their clients until they're blue in the face, but there is an instinct that we as consumers cannot get over, that says there's something wrong with this.
This has been sitting on the shelf a little too long. Something's
Exactly.
wrong.
And you know what? Even if you
Gets
can
a
get
stink on
somebody, even if you can get somebody to acknowledge the days on market here are not an indication of whether or not this listing, there's something wrong with this listing. The other thing that is, again, extremely difficult to shake as a consumer is this perception that comes into place, like, this has been on the on the market for a year and a half. I bet I can lowball this guy.
Right, sure.
I bet you they've had no action at, $10 million. I'm coming in with an offer of $5 million, even if the property is worth way more than that, and even if the seller has no expectations of closing in 90 days because they know their property is unique, and sourcing a buyer for a property in this market is difficult because there are so few of them.
Mhm.
So in these instances, the benefits of the open market are outweighed pretty significantly by the downsides. It's, though, important to call out that there is, I have, at Luxury Presence, we have our team has been working on some resources for private listings, and we've put together kind of a rules to list by, not just rules to live by, but rules to list by when it comes to listing property and deciding whether or not private versus public is the right move. And the first commandment in my rules to list by is that the client's best interests come first every time.
Yeah.
So your first point on the decision tree is, what is the outcome that is going to benefit my clients? If the outcome is highest and best price at all costs, then the open market is probably the best choice for you. But that isn't always the case, and your client's best interests are something that are determined individually in a bespoke process. There is no rubber stamp for this. And so when we're thinking about the context of private listings and whether or not listing professionals should pursue public markets versus private listing networks, that's the first question to ask is, where are my clients' best interests served?
Yeah, I think you've made the case that on the luxury side of things, there's a pretty strong argument to be made at times
Hmm.
that the private listing network is maybe the
Yep.
better call, especially for the lowball situation, which I hadn't thought about, which is
Hmm.
you are required to present all offers.
Yeah,
So
it's the truth.
you have a $10 million property that's been sitting for a year and a half. You are going to get some lowball offers just because why not? And agents are going to their clients are going to fire those out, and now you have to deal with those. And even though it's they're never going to be accepted by your
Hmm.
client, you now have some responsibility to deal with those.
Yeah.
So there is yes, that makes all the sense in the world for everyone who's not playing in the luxury space.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts about private listings for sort of average price point
Hmm.
properties in a market?
So this is going to be, I know I'm going to get flack for this. So please bring it on. I welcome your criticism, people. Um, Private listings should be a tool in the toolkit of every real estate professional in every market, as long as your organization, or as long as your association allows it. And I'm going to give you two reasons why. The first, private listings are a fantastic tool for price discovery. Price The pricing of properties is becoming more and more difficult in the modern age of real estate for three primary reasons. The first is we've had commission disruption over the last 18 to 24 months that has affected listing prices and the accuracy of pricing history. So
And yeah, running comps is harder now.
it's totally harder from a solely from a commission perspective,
Mhm.
because back 24 months ago, um, it was it was not uncommon that there was a standard. If people can, if they are watching, I'm doing air quotes here, a standard commission of 6%, which was um, which means that of the sold price, 6% of that came off the top to go to commissions. But a lot has changed in the last 24 months, such that 6% is there's the idea of a standard commission is out the window now, and most commissions have been compressed as a result of that. So, where most agents were charging 6% before, 5% is the norm now. 1% difference doesn't seem like that much, but when it comes to an average price point in the United States of over $400,000, that's 4 grand. That is difference in that is a flex in your list price. So comps are more difficult for that single reason, but just generally, comps have become more and more difficult to run in the United States. Also because our sales volume is down. We have fewer transactions that are taking place based on demand. And so we are going deeper and deeper into historical records to find comps. The markets are moving very quickly. We all know how expensive property is now versus just 2 years ago. If you pull comps that are 24 months old, the market has matured and has in significant ways since then. So the window of understanding where how relevant comps are has shortened so much that a lot of agents are having a hard time pulling accurate comps for properties. So how do we get around this? We supplement our CMA strategy by listing privately with a price discovery model,
Mhm.
such that you can get real-time feedback from other professionals in the market and other buyers that are actively looking. You can do that sort of price discovery before listing on the MLS, such that you have a much more accurate understanding of what the market will bear for your property. And if you get an offer that meets your needs in that price discovery period, then Bob's your uncle. You've actually shortcutted the process and you have what you want out of this. If you don't, then you have this real-time CMA function that gives you new ways of understanding the value of a property and new ways of servicing your clients. So that's the first reason. And I recognize that is a non-traditional answer, but these are the realities, people. This is what's happening.
It, one of the disappointments that I've felt, I'm curious to get your take, and it goes back to sort of your whole reasoning for using the private listing network as a pricing discovery model or tool, is that we changed the way that commissions are structured, even though for a lot of us it's still ultimately at the end of the day business as usual for many transactions, but the way it's sort of uh, uh, put on the ledger it looks a little different. However, nobody has really solved for this for CMAs, and I'm sort of a little disappointed in. I don't know that there's an easy solution for this, but this is a massive problem that really hasn't. I know you and I have talked about it, or you've talked about it in particular, but this is a huge issue because if we are going to be using CMAs going forward, we need to be able to solve for accuracy. And
Mhm.
there is, I don't know if there's a way to do that. Sort of industry wide. But boy, that would be something I would want my association or my MLS to start thinking about, because nobody's really talking about that. And most agents aren't solving for that discrepancy. They're just running CMAs as per usual. And they're not ultimately going to be as accurate in many cases.
Yeah, it's the truth. And the hard thing about that is we have differing approaches to CMAs across the industry. Folks who have been doing CMAs for 30 years are going to run them differently than people who have been doing CMAs for 3 months. This used to be a relatively standardized practice, such that any Coldwell Banker agent, for instance, who was all trained on the same deck, were getting similar numbers. That maybe the accuracy range was a little wider based on the how if you didn't have as much experience. But I mean, that conventional wisdom is kind of out the window now,
Yeah.
frankly. And we're rewriting that playbook. There is another reason, though, why I think private listings need to be in the arsenal of all real estate professionals, and it has everything to do with the historical nationwide inventory shortage. And here's what I mean by this. I'm not suggesting that we take listings that would be bound for the public markets and convince our clients that their best interests would be served by converting those to private listings. That would actually hurt the inventory of our market. What I am suggesting is that um, hungry real estate agents who are working on scaling their business and don't have the listings that they want to support the business that they want to operate should start operating these private listing options for listing clients to give property owners who are not actively looking to sell but may still be open to offers that meet like an aspirational price point or their transactional goals. These folks can get in the game here. And
Ah,
there is like let's say you door knock an entire neighborhood and three of the folks in the neighborhood are like, yes, I'm interested in selling in the next year, um so we should talk, and we can get listing paperwork together. And 100 people say, get out of here, I don't want anything to do with you. So you got three listing or potential listings. That's great. But what if the demand for that neighborhood is actually 10? There's 10 buyers who are looking
yeah,
in that neighborhood.
right.
If you can convert a handful of those 100s to be like, listen, I know you're not looking to sell right now. That's great. I totally respect that. What would be something that would provoke you to sell?
Right.
Is there
What
a
is your I will move tomorrow
That's
price?
exactly right. And that's not a new tactic. Like that
No.
is a conversation we've had for a long time with potential sellers. The difference, though, here is that smart agents are using this as a chance to essentially create a nurturing relationship with these potential property or with these potential sellers by creating these loose private listing agreements and arrangements, and then taking those agreements and arrangements and leveraging them across a couple of different platforms. The first is you can create downstream of NAR's rule changes to clear cooperation. You can create much more easily office exclusive listings now, such that um, you don't have to market anything publicly. You can just share these listings in a much more streamlined way with just the people in your office. Luxury Presence, my team that I'm so grateful and excited to be a part of. We have a tool called the Brokerage Listing Network. It's a tool that we provide to brokerages that are Luxury Presence clients that allow them to seamlessly share private listings within their office, not privately. This is just, I've got a private listing. I can share it with agents within my office exclusively. These are folks who don't have an interest in moving now, but they clearly have an interest in the value of their property.
Sure.
And what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You have a private listing that goes nowhere. The contract expires. This person goes off into the ether, but they know your name and they're coming back to you if you gave them a good experience, if their perspective changes. The best thing that could happen is that this person gets interest and activity from their private listing such that they said, well, you know, maybe I am interested in listing. And this property goes on the open market and we add inventory. But what the realistic thing to happen here is that some of this private listing inventory with flexible timelines works to take some of the pressure off the public market,
Yeah.
such that the demand is more balanced with supply, which makes it easier on buyers, um, which makes money a little bit cheaper when you're borrowing money because you don't have such market tumult happening. The mortgage markets can calm down just a little bit. The bottom line is more houses available for sale, public or private, is good for the market when we are hungry for inventory like this. I know that it isn't the traditional means of thinking about it, and I know that, you know, talking about listings that, with clients that have high privacy needs, or, that have exclusive listings with a very limited buyer pool, or, these like advanced CMA strategies or flexible timelines. I understand this is disruptive and it is not what a lot of people want to hear if you've been doing real estate for a long time. Here's the reality. The old ways of operating are being replaced right now. We are living in a new era of real estate, and you are either a part of that new era or you're on the sidelines watching it.
Yeah, it's, boy, you have really opened my eyes to, as a non-practicing agent, I do have to say my ignorance should be pretty high around this, as I'm non-practicing, but I I take a lot of what you say as really great advice to pass on to agents, because I was all set to hear it never makes sense unless you're a public person and you need privacy. And you've granted some use cases and well argued them to have them make sense. And I'm thinking, maybe I should put my own property up there with a sort of a higher than what I would expect to get price, because everyone's got that I'll sell today price if it comes through. And in my particular neighborhood, there aren't a lot of listings, so that might be something to consider. And so there are use cases for this, and I'm really grateful that you brought those to our attention. I know that this provided a ton of value for our listeners, and we'll continue to discuss controversial topics like these. Maybe next month, if it's still in the ether, we could talk
Mm-hmm.
about the U.S. credit being downgraded and what that just did effectively to the the lending market, which
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought of that as a downstream effect. Of course, it is, and it drove obviously rates up, and people are
Yeah.
probably a little bit more stressed than they were with buyer situations now. So anyway, we could talk about that in a future episode, but this was great. Thank you for this long and in-depth and thoughtful conversation around the private listing network. I had such a really digital view of this, a black or white perspective, and there are shades of gray that really make make it so that it could and does
Mm.
possibly make sense in certain situations. And I appreciate you bringing that to our listeners. That's a tremendous value. So on behalf of our listeners, Chris, thank you for your insight. You are truly somebody who is so well learned in these kind of topics. We're so grateful to have you. And we should also talk about where you are going to be featured. Are you speaking any engagements coming up?
I have a couple of private events coming up that I can't talk about on the air here, but if y'all know that I'm coming, I'll see you soon. Um, and otherwise, I'm really leaning into some of the amazing opportunities that we're creating from a content perspective at Luxury Presence. We are getting ready to release our next set of content in our content series called the A List. I recently sat down and interviewed Sally Foster Jones, who is one of the leading professionals. I think she runs the number one team in the country out of Beverly Hills. We just recently released a set of 3 long form interviews with her. I also sat down with Ben Balak of Beverly Hills, former real estate reality TV star, media personality, to get his take on things. We're getting ready to release some long form interviews with him. So if you're looking for a little bit more Chris Linsell in your life, head over to the Luxury Presence YouTube channel. You can listen to me talk ad nauseum about some of the best most important topics in real estate with some of the industry's most impressive and successful professionals. Lot to be excited about right now.
Great. Well, chrislinsell.com is where you can go to learn all about Chris and
Mhm.
follow him on all the different social platforms, in particular X and LinkedIn. He is very prominent there. And Chris, thank you as always. On behalf of Chris and myself, I want to thank our audience. Chris has been with us for many years, coming on every month, spending time that he really doesn't have, and he is gracious enough to provide to us. So we are thankful. And as always, for the best way you can help us is by telling a friend. Think of another realtor that needs to hear about private listing network sort of conversations and pros and cons. And this was a great recap of when and why not to use it. And so let's shoot that over to them. We'd appreciate it. Of course, if you aren't yet a subscriber, just find us wherever you're listening to this right now. Hit that subscribe button. We'd appreciate you, as well as let us know what you think of the show. Leave us a review. Also, if you have an idea, a topic, something that you're wanting Chris to noodle on and come up with some specific opinions about, let us know. We appreciate that. We always love hearing from our audience. And of course, thank you to all of our sponsors who keep us running this show effectively, and all the staff that helps get this thing put on the air. So, Chris, thank you once again. We will see everybody on the next episode.
Thanks, DJ. Talk to you soon.